Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Eat, Play, Chug podcast. My name is Joshua Levy, joined with my co-host, Vince. What's up, Vince?
Not much. Very excited. A lot to cover today. I know we're going to get into the Masters. I know some of the NBA drafts, some of the big trades that have happened. And then, certainly want to get into our favorite beer. And we certainly listen to our listeners. So we'll be discussing a beer that was brought to us, and I'm looking forward to trying that today.
Yeah. First things first. Let's talk about the Masters, man. First of all, Augusta National, gorgeous course. It was a little weird seeing nobody like watching the Masters this year, like on the sidelines. No crowds following people around, no chanting. But what a performance by Dustin Johnson. I mean, after getting caught with his nose in the cookie jar, he bounces back for his best finishing performance of all time. The first player to ever finish with minus 20 in the Masters.
Yeah. I mean, obviously best finish. I don't think anyone really saw it coming because everyone was looking at DeChambeau to be the leader or favorite, right? I certainly saw a lot of people talking about his driving game, and we'll get into him a little bit later. Well, let's talk about Dustin Johnson, right? So 2017 Dustin Johnson at Augusta, right? The Masters, beautiful course like we talked about, birds chirping, fans out, having a great time. The thing with that, right, is really this year is a huge redemption story because if you recall in 2017, so he was the number one player like I talked about, but he took a fall down the stairs and a lot of questions around that. That's why I call this a redemption story because was it the fall down the stairs or was it the use of the powders? So I'm not sure it was one or the other, but regardless, right? He's back at number one now. He shot 20 under, Masters record, won by 5 strokes, and absolutely dominated who everyone thought would win it, Bryson DeChambeau. I think Bryson finished at one under or 2 under, so beat him by 18 or 17 shots. Fantastic story, and not only does he win in regards to the Masters, but he wins when he gets home. Paulina Gretzky.
Well, yeah, the guy was just absolutely shredding. It is one thing for someone to win the Masters, but the guy had the leading score going into the weekend, and he shoots the low on Saturday and Sunday. And it really solidified, really drove home the fact that he was the one player that stood above all others, and he definitely deserved that green jacket. I mean, some of the stats are kind of ridiculous. He had 1 3-putt the entire weekend. He hit 83% of the greens and 79% of the fairways. The guy finished, set a record at 20 under par, 2 strokes better than the former record held jointly by Tiger Woods and Jordan Spieth. Johnson, he became the first world number 1 to win the Masters since 2001. The guy did well. You got to hand it to him.
How cool is it too that you get your green jacket from Tiger Woods? I think that is pretty cool, right? We remember Tiger winning it, but getting the green jacket from Tiger, I think, is one of the coolest things in sports. Obviously, right? He is, the de facto face of golf. Probably now, right? That's changing as Bryson comes up. You have Dustin Johnson, and many of the others, Bruce Koepka, right? So, I think it's a fantastic win for him, but I just think it's a really cool and special moment to get that from Tiger Woods, who is arguably one of the best players of all time, right next to Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah, it was like a changing the guard moment. It was really nice to see that. And speaking of Tiger Woods, he played well. Minus the unfortunate hole 12 where he hits the water 3 times. The guy has cold ice running through his veins, though. The way he played after that hole, it made it seem like he had no recollection of hole 12 at all. The guy goes on to birdie 5 of the last 6 holes and still gets a little bit of the spotlight by giving CJ that green jacket.
Yeah, I think one point you brought up, right? There were no fans at Augusta, so I think it allows these guys, especially in golf, right? Golf, try to be very zen. Obviously, you're out there by yourself, so you're in a very much isolated moment to produce, and you're the only one that can produce. So I think actually taking away the fans lessens the nervousness, the anxiety around the shots, allows them to be more in the moment, rather than kind of talk to fans or see them. So I think for golf and the players, that's why you're seeing some of these high scores now, just because they're not dealing with fan noise or crowd noise. They're not having to appeal directly to the fans, right? They're
Right.
no longer there. It's simply just the eye in the sky being CBS and Jim
Just like
Nance.
a normal little round of golf with a few extra caddies around.
Yeah, and less beer.
Yeah, because it's on TV.
Yep.
God forbid they shotgun beers like we do on the golf course. But maybe I think that does play a factor in it. Maybe it actually has a negative effect for some players as well. I'm speaking, of course, about Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, he was the favorite coming into this tournament, with consistent tee shots, 20 yards past Justin Thomas, 40 yards further than Tiger Woods, and only 10 shy of my tee average. So he was the favorite coming into this. And the scary part about it, he had 4 drives of more than 340 yards on both par 5 holes, where he was just able to use wedges to get onto the green. And he was the betting favorite. Excuse me. Going into Augusta, even he even boasted that the course was a par 67 when the actual par of the course was a 72. I mean, he was absolutely mashing the ball, but after a COVID scare, he could never really screw his head on straight, and had one bad break after another. My favorite quote from the weekend is like when he launched his ball on the number 3, he's like, "So you're saying if we can't find it, that's a lost ball?" And which led to a ruling issue, and then a triple bogey on the 3rd hole. 3 bogeys followed that on the next 4 holes, and I think it might have been a little bit of karma calling your shot like Babe Ruth, and just coming up a little bit short.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, this is the driving champ, right? Bryson Protein Shake DeChambeau, who obviously won the driving competition. But this was really an all-time fail on his end, right? Everyone thought, at least from a betting perspective, right, that he would be the one just because he could drive the ball down right through the fairways, get closer on the green, probably shoot a lot of eagles, if not birdies, and go out of it. And he didn't do that, right? So finished, like I talked about before, he finished 18 shots behind Dustin Johnson. The funniest thing is that he only finished 2 strokes higher than the 63-year-old Bernard Langer. So that was the guy he played with, but that was kind of funny is that you got the 63-year-old beating out the young gun. If we put an analogy to
Golf.
Bryson DeChambeau and Masters, right? It reminds me of the Rams in the 2019 Super Bowl, only putting up 3 points against New England, and that was the hottest offense, right? They were calling them the next show on turf, which was the original Rams with Kurt Warner and Torrey Holt, and Isaac Bruce. And it's funny, he completely flatlined in this scenario and really dropped the ball. I think it's one of the biggest, if you will, upsets, but also one of the biggest failures. Having someone like Bryson DeChambeau being, like I said, the betting favorite and so forth, and then coming up that short. I think on his end, right, he's got to probably revisit the fridge and maybe stop drinking so many protein shakes and maybe actually work on some golf.
Maybe, yeah. And he also had some talk about refitting his clubs for distance, like the length of it. So I don't know if that plays into it or not, but maybe like be a little bit more humble coming in, be a little more prepared, and who knows, if the fans come back, maybe he feeds off their energy as well. All right, so let's move on into the NBA draft analysis. There were a few trades up this week. For our NBA draft analysis, we bring back Dommy, young Dom. How are you doing, Dom? How's it going?
I'm doing great and looking forward to this afternoon.
Absolutely. And thanks for joining us again. Yeah, and to kick off our conversation at first, there were a few trades this past week leading into the draft, and it left some teams in some good positions. Who do you think the biggest winner from these past few days and these past few trades are?
I'm going to go right off the bat and start with the Suns. I really like what they did getting Chris Paul. I think the Suns had a lot of momentum. Again, I talked about it last week, going 8-0 in the bubble. and having Devin Booker really shine in those games. A lot of the national media doesn't really focus on Devin Booker, but I've always liked his game. He has amazing footwork, kind of modeled after Kobe's game. So I'd love to see Devin Booker get put on a national stage and make the playoffs. And I think CP3 being there will provide him some leadership, some maturity, and I think they'll definitely make the playoffs this year. And we can really see the Suns take another step. They haven't made the playoffs since Amari Stoudemire left in 2010 for the Knicks. So excited to see what the Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Chris Paul pairing can do. And then they're also offset by Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges. So I think that's a really solid team in a stacked and loaded West. So really like what the Suns did there.
Absolutely. I would just say one thing to that, just to piggyback on it. I think they're easily the 5 or 6 seed now in the Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing around bringing in Chris Paul is just potentially to have the ability to re-sign Booker long-term. If they start winning, they get in the playoffs, they get more consistency. You have Ayton, you have Chris Paul, you have Booker. It's that 3-studded monster for the Suns. Then they have consistent 5, 6 seed, maybe 4. Seeing how the Spurs come, if they curtail their play, obviously losing players, and then Rockets potentially losing Harden, maybe Westbrook, you could easily see a 4 seed, but probably 5 to 6 is more realistic. With that being said, I think that alone will help Booker stay in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like all these small market teams, their biggest thing nowadays is just how do they keep their stars, and giving Devin Booker a taste of the playoffs will definitely help them do that. The big negative about Chris Paul is his contract. But it's fairly low risk for them. Big upside because, again, they can keep Devin Booker. They can make the playoffs and watch that team really grow. On the flip side, you also got to love what the Thunder did. I think it's one of those rare situations where it really was a win-win trade. On the Thunder side of things, they turned Paul George and Russell Westbrook into a trove of first-round picks and young talent. So they got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who looks like a stud. And then in this trade, they were able to bring back Kelly Oubre, who I like. He kind of fits the 3-and-D mold. And then also another first-round pick. So the Thunder have picks all the way out to 2027. So they can either pick swap or have multiple picks in the first round all the way up to 2027. And I think they've done a great job building for the future. So
I think it's a total of almost like 17 first-round picks over the next 5 or 6 years, which is unbelievable.
It's crazy.
I know people call Sam Presti, the magician, the best GM. I will never go that path because when you had Harden, when you had Westbrook and Durant all in your locker room, and you decided to trade away the 2 best players and keep the 3rd worst, you're not the best.
Yeah, they did it opposite, right?
Exactly.
I think that shows now. But they made the finals, one up against LeBron, and you have Harden, Westbrook, and Durant, and you don't even run it back.
Yep.
You trade Harden for a bag of peanuts, and then the Thunder never made the finals again. So that I agree with you. And Sam Presti can never be considered one of the top GMs solely because he let 3 MVPs out of his grasp.
Yep.
All right. Well, speaking of losers in that sense, let's talk about the losers of the trades coming into the draft.
I don't know if they're a loser yet, but I think the biggest losers of the offseason so far are the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets mortgaged their whole future for Russell Westbrook last year, right? They traded their picks and pick swaps all the way out to 2026 with the Thunder. And now all these reports are coming out that they want to cut money. Harden's unhappy. Westbrook's unhappy. So not only do they not have their first-round picks for the foreseeable future, but their 2 stars already want out. And I think you've seen them kind of shift to more of a rebuild and trying to accumulate more assets with the trade of Robert Covington. They traded Robert Covington, who was huge for them when they picked him up at the deadline last year. And just in terms of fitting their style of play, the 3-and-D guy can switch on to bigs and spread the floor for them. And they already traded him to the Portland Trailblazers. And and they still got to trade Westbrook and Harden. So I think the Houston Rockets are set up for a long, arduous road back to relevance just because they have no picks and their stars won out. So I think they're a big loser.
Could you imagine though, as being the Houston Rockets, like you're trading Covington to the Blazers and you get a first round pick back, but the Texans couldn't get one for DeAndre Hopkins? It's unbelievable. I mean, it's just like, wow. But I think to piggyback on what you're saying, and this is a little controversial. I get it. People might not agree with me, and that's fine. I actually think the Bucks made one of the biggest mistakes bringing on Drew Holiday. I don't mind giving up George Hill and Eric Bledsoe. What I care about is really the 3 picks, the 3 first-round picks, right? So you have the number 24, you have unprotected first-round picks in 2025, 2027. Then you have the swap on 2024 and 2026. Drew Holiday's not worth that. Sorry, just not. And I think that it's inflated completely across now everyone, right? So let's just say if Giannis came on the market, you would probably have to give up 7 first-round picks. I mean, like, it's just impossible. So he overinflated the market. They overpaid. Obviously, the Pelicans did this unbelievably well by getting all of that back, not only for being Drew Holiday, but in the last trade, right, for Anthony Davis. Just fantastic bringing all those first-round picks in. But I know that one will be a little controversial. On the flip side, what I do like the Bogdanovich trade. Dante DiVincenzo, good player. I don't think an all-star, but decent player. Ilyasova and then G.J. Wilson, whatever. Those are throw-ins. Give me Bogdanovich. He's the only person basically, left on the farm out in Sacramento that no one knows about. So once he gets into more main spotlight, you'll see this guy's a great shooter, great footwork, great ball handler. He's big for his size, playing the 2 or 3, but he can really shoot the ball and he's clutch. He's been clutch all throughout his European play, and he's been clutch on the Sacramentos. Obviously, they haven't had a lot of ability or times to win, so it's been here and there in regards to the clutch shots. But certainly, I think he's a proven winner. And like I said, I know it'll be a little controversial, but I think that was a big mistake to give all of that up for Drew Holiday.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the point we just made in terms of these small market teams doing everything they can to keep their stars. I agree with Vince. I think it was a big overpay for Drew Holiday, who's a fine player. He's an all-NBA player, great two-way player, great on defense, so it makes the Bucks even more daunting on defense when you add him to Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Chris Middleton. And that's one of the reasons I like the Bogdan trade, is because his biggest deficiency is defense, but on that team, it's not really going to be an issue. But to go off of Vince's point, to trade 3 unprotected picks is extremely risky. And we saw what happens to the Brooklyn Nets, who essentially traded their unprotected picks, went for a win now mode, and then those unprotected picks vaulted the Celtics rebuild and gave them Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And Giannis, even if Giannis signs the Supermax this year, that contract could end in 2025, or he could ask to be traded even before then. So you're looking at unprotected picks. If the Bucks don't have Giannis, those could be very, very high in the lottery. And I think that's a huge risk to take on. But at the end of the day, if they do keep Giannis, that's all that matters. But very, very risky. And another great job from the Pelicans to get those unprotected picks. Vince touched on it. They turned Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday to multiple first-round picks and pick swaps all the way out to 2027. They already have a solid core. They got Brandon Ingram. Zion Williams, obviously, is very exciting. So really like what they've done for the future as well.
David Griffin, Executive of the Year.
Yeah, agreed. So he turned a forced Anthony Davis trade into a very promising future between them and the Thunder. I don't know who has a brighter future, but those are definitely the top 2 teams, probably along with the Mavs. But yep.
And you can see why Dom is our NBA professional analyst here. It's great to be a fly on the wall of these kind of conversations, as I'm not nearly as privy into or knowledgeable about the NBA as neither Vince nor you, Dom. So appreciate that. And I mean, I do want to probe you for your opinion about another player, or who I like to call the biggest loser of the NBA, in LeBron James. Now, I know it's a little controversial. He is a 4-time MVP and a 3-time NBA championship, and he's got a bevy of all-star appearances. But and will go down as probably one of the greatest players to ever play. But which is such a shame because he's essentially destroyed the game of basketball, in my opinion, by first off in 2000 or in the early 2000s going from Cleveland to Miami. To join D Wade and Chris Bosh on a big three structured team, it basically, in my mind, it incentivized NBA teams to start building these big three-headed teams, and it gave it an advantage to larger market franchises, and put all these other smaller teams at significant disadvantages.
LeBron James, there's no denying it. He's probably the most talented basketball player to ever walk the earth. He's probably the most talented athlete to ever walk the earth. But with that said, to your point, he really did open up the door for all this player movement, big three joining up. And his whole obsession with controlling the narrative, the way he manipulates the media, there's always leaks from his camp. And, I look at it as truly being a cancer to all these teams. He tried to get Eric Spoelstra fired his first year in Miami. It didn't work because they have a great organization. Now Eric Spoelstra is probably a top 3 coach in the league. He did get David Blatt fired, and essentially he wants to be the coach, the GM, the player. Everything has to revolve around LeBron, or else he's leaving.
I heard he likes to design the jerseys as well.
Yeah, exactly. He wants control of everything, and he's obsessed with controlling the narrative. I don't agree with him always crying for fouls, for this and that. He truly is the best, most dominant player of our era. So act like it, and win on your own terms. You don't need to always be asking for the media respect. And let's see what he can do. But not a big LeBron guy. But with that said, you got to respect the guy's game. His talent is undeniable. But it's the ancillary stuff that you want to see him do better. For me personally, he has chosen one tatted on his back, which is pretty insane.
That says it all. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the way that he kind of maneuvered and manipulated and completely tampered to get Anthony Davis. He got his boy Maverick Carter in there, sign on Anthony Davis, engineered a trade to the Lakers. There's no way the NBA should be letting that stuff happen. That's giving the players way too much control.
Yep, I agree with a lot of that. I think a couple other points I'd like to bring up. I think the big three is one of the first downfalls of the NBA. Certainly, right, we're Warriors fans, so I love that, having Durant come over. But when you have the big three, when you think about like the 80s and 90s where you had consistent players staying 10 to 12 years playing with that organization and winning like that, I think that's a lot harder than going and joining an organization and building it up and bringing in superstars. Because consistency across 10-year period with one organization, with injuries, with new players, with drafts, with what free agents you could bring in, because obviously if you're retaining a lot of players, you're not bringing in a lot just due to the fact that you're giving them that salary. So I think that's a lot more difficult. And the other portion of that, right, is that it's ruining, say, the smaller markets, right? So these smaller markets hold on to these players across the rookie contract, have the ability to extend the max or super max, however that looks for them. But majority of these players end up just leaving, and it's not about the money, right? We talk about it. They have the sponsorships on the outside with shoe deals or whatever it may be. So the money in the NBA is not exactly the most money they'll make. And if they miss any in the NBA, right, they're making it up in regards to endorsements and sponsorships and so forth. The other two, I think, is around, LeBron's trying to make now the NBA the AAU, right? So he's bringing in Maverick Carter, and what they're trying to do is essentially pinpoint it to where LeBron brings in people into, basically their agency and states, hey, we want you to join in this, which off the bat, right, is tampering. It's actually illegal in the NBA to have a player promote an agency to come into that. So he's taking the AAU approach of basically having the ability to create this whole thing, not allow these players to go get maximum dollar value, but rather stay within the bounds of their agency so that they're continuing to increase their revenue paths and so forth. Like you have some players like Caldwell Pope, right? Took a 1-year, $24 million deal on the Lakers. Maybe have gotten a bigger deal there, not sure, but they at least extended him a 1-year deal. Maybe now, what does he get now? we don't know. But I think he's just taken more of an AAU approach in regards to the NBA. Yeah, that's all I got. All right, we'll cut that.
No, I totally agree, and that's I think one of the narratives that kind of gets underplayed and talked about, but not on this podcast because what really grinds my gears the most is the fact that LeBron James will totally ignore something like injustices that are going on in China in favor of criticizing and pushing forward a narrative that America is somehow worse or much worse. And what it really does is, like, when he's able to do that, what he does is he basically, this year particularly, he was pushing protests. He was pushing the league to bend to his narrative, and it got to the point where some of the games were not going to be played unless the owners bow down to his will. And that's all fine and dandy for LeBron James, but LeBron James only. It's those bigger, larger contracts, those bigger names that don't have to worry about where their next, their next team is going to be next year, or how much money they're going to make in the future. It's the sixth man. It's those bench players that are fighting for positions, fighting for their jobs the next year that really get hurt the most. And I think those are the voices that don't get heard because of people like LeBron James.
Yeah, and just speaking about LeBron James too. Sorry, not Maverick Carter, but Rich Paul and the Clutch Sports Group. So that's what I mean by the AAU, kind of that being focused around LeBron bringing in players, Rich Paul signing them, keeping them within kind of their home, if you will, or four walls. And then being able to kind of create this AAU approach where they're building these teams, right? As you saw, they had essentially as well a tryout, kind of like a combine, right? So they're doing a lot of things on the outside and bringing people in, which obviously is all within LeBron's portfolio, right? He obviously he's invested in this. The other big thing too, when you think about the NBA and LeBron, right? LeBron got a $1 billion deal from Nike. Okay, so when you think about what happened with Daryl Morey and the Hong Kong issues that he talked about on Twitter. Now, right, to be fired and now on the Sixers as the VP of basketball operations. When you think about this and where we went in regards to now, being in the dome or the wherever they call it, the bubble down in Florida or wherever the hell it was again, I can't remember. But LeBron had a whole issue with the Bucks taking the onus and the lead on basically around all of the different types of issues around the world, the social injustice and so forth, to where he stormed out of the meeting of the players meeting,
that's right,
coaches and refs, right? Like leaders don't do that, right? That's not how you lead. It certainly it shouldn't come from LeBron as who really is the face of basketball. He's the face of Nike. You have China who owns Nike. You have all of these different entities that really, and Nike owning the NBA, you should say. So you have all these different entities where, from the person who's deemed, if you will, El Presidente of the NBA, really should be one who's more of a leader and rather taking, not say, oh, you guys came up with it first, this is an issue. Rather, hey, great, right? Now we have movement across, in a democratic way across the NBA, right? This is great. We want people to lead on their own. We want them to give their opinions. I should support that. And that's exactly what he didn't do.
No, yeah. I mean, I said Maverick Carter. I meant Rich Paul. Maverick Carter controls the media while Rich Paul controls the player movement for LeBron. But it's obvious tampering. And just to add to Vince's point, I think if you do support a cause like LeBron did, which is totally fine, don't get mad and storm out of meetings. He was mad that he didn't think of it first and got mad at the Bucks for walking out. So I think that just exemplifies the type of leader that LeBron is. He's always crying. He wants all the credit, never wants to take any of the blame. Everyone makes all these excuses for him when he loses the finals, but then he gets all the credit when they win the finals. No one talks about Kyrie hitting the big shot, or how about Anthony Davis this year, who led their team in every single significant category as well as being their best defensive player. LeBron only led in assists, but LeBron was in the MVP conversation over AD. So it goes back to LeBron trying to control the narrative and just his obsession with the media and just overall LeBron just being a huge manipulator. He manipulates the NBA, manipulates the media, manipulates players. just for his own advancing.
Yeah, which leads me to my next question to you guys. I mean, we all agree that LeBron has got way too much control over the NBA. Now, other leagues don't seem to have this problem. What do you think is systemic in the NBA system that needs to be changed, and why do you think LeBron was able to take advantage of it so easily?
Well, I think the NBA more so than any sport, right? They have 5 players on the court at one time. So a single player is going to be able to impact a game and impact a franchise more so than any sport. In baseball, the best player ever didn't even win a World Series, and Barry Bonds. In football, you have the quarterback who can control the team, but ultimately there's 52 other players on the field. So more so than any other sport, the superstar is what drives the NBA and gives the players this control. And I'm all for player movement. But at the same time, it's the manipulation and controlling every single other factor of an NBA franchise and of a team.
Well, that's what I mean, right? I mean, yeah, you could be the face of the franchise, and I see like Tom Brady is the face of the NFL right now.
Yeah.
But he was never in charge of personnel movement. He was never in charge of anything outside the play of football, right? So how was LeBron able to like manipulate and take advantage of the entire league, and what needs to change, do you think, in the NBA?
I mean, I think it's just a LeBron issue, personally. But one of the biggest factors, I think, is the max contract. With the max contract model, LeBron could be making just as much as Tobias Harris, right? They're technically both on max contracts, and what that allows players to do is bring their buddies in. If you didn't have a max contract, I don't think LeBron would be teaming up with 2 of his other buddies, because he'd be trying to make the most money in the league. He'd be trying to make $60 million a year, 75% of the cap, and along with other players too. So I think it goes back to the system that the NBA has of the max contract, which leads to these big threes. So that would be the first thing to go for me.
And I think there's something too when you think about just the history of the NBA, right? The NBA is run by a single superstar, right? It was Magic Johnson, then it was Michael Jordan, and then right now in the current day it's been LeBron. Right, we're getting towards the end of it, and we'll find out who's next. But as the NBA has grown, it's become more of a global sport, right? Michael Jordan helping that, David Stern as well, bringing it to China, making more global sport. Having Jordan brand, Nike shoes, all of that. So now you have way more money involved than you've ever had, in the history of the NBA. Now you have LeBron coming in, who was a super phenom coming out of the high school, right? Number one, easy choice, not a question. Goes to his hometown, Cleveland. Obviously, right, doesn't win there until he goes back. But he has the whole description of how he can basically control the NBA, to where now he has this $1 billion Nike deal. So he has all this money. You have Nike, who's basically running the NBA, right? So people are now entrusting LeBron to basically set his rosters, which I don't think getting Anthony Davis is a very hard decision to make. But I think the surrounding people are probably a little bit harder, right? Do you bring in a J.R. Smith, right? That's a LeBron call. Like with Tom Brady, do you bring in Antonio Brown? That's a Brady call, right? So there's certain guys within the NBA, NFL, maybe not MLB as much, but I think NBA more so than ever, right? You got these stars who kind of pick or bless, if you will, players that come in. I think LeBron, out of any of them, right, has more hand in the cookie jar of the GM role. But certainly, right, if as dominant Warriors fans, like you would assume Steph Curry has some type of understanding or blessing of the pick that's going to come at 2 or whatever it is, right? So I just think when you make more money, you're more marketable, and you have this $1 billion deal. You have Nike, who runs the NBA. They answer to China. China is a big producer of the Nike shoe. You kind of let this guy, and he's proven that he's a winner, right, over the course of building these big threes and so forth. You kind of let him drive the ship.
Yeah, I think Dom nailed it. I mean, perfectly. I think the first thing that needs to go is the max salary cap, because not only does that prevent teams from signing those big 3 centerpieces, but it also it also drives competition for those players, right? So, I mean, if you look at baseball, I mean, baseball's model is the best one to exemplify. There's no max contract, so everybody on the team makes a different amount of money, and that allows you to go out and overbid for somebody to come to a bad team like San Diego did with Manny Machado, signing him for $300 million when no one else would do that, especially in a down year. So if you take away that max contract, like you get you start avoiding that clustering effect of the big superstars going to the market teams that can dish out the highest amount of higher contracts.
I agree, and with the max contract, the NBA is definitely the most marketable sport. It's one of the only sports where you actually do see these players' faces all the time. Baseball players wearing hats and helmets. Football players are wearing helmets. So the NBA is by far the most marketable, and the true non-salary cap thing is these shoe deals. So you get rid of the max contract, I guarantee you LeBron is going to make sure he's the highest paid player in the NBA, and he's not going to be taking less money. But what that would do for the rest of the team is wouldn't allow him to have two other stars. So I think the max contract would be the first thing to go, which would decentivize these teaming ups and these pairing and really reward teams like the Warriors, who for the most part drafted their whole core and didn't need to tank or get a first round pick to do it. They really did do it the right way. Obviously, they got Durant in what was kind of a salary cap loophole. But again, they were in that position because they drafted and developed their own talent. So.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, that's right. And okay, cool. Well, thanks, Dami, for that NBA segment. I learned a lot, and I appreciate your time.
Anytime. Do we want to go over any last predictions for the NBA draft today?
Go for it. You got any? Let's lay it on us.
You got any hot takes, Vince?
Hot takes. I think Ball goes number one. I don't know if that's that hot, but I think that's what's going to happen. There's also this rumor as of this morning that Jordan is completely infatuated with LaMelo Ball, and as if he were given the stamp of approval. So either that means, right, they wait till 3 or they trade to 1, and then it's Wiseman or Ball, and I'll be sweating if it's Wiseman.
Yeah, I mean, the upside for James Wiseman is tantalizing, and I would love for the Warriors to grab him, and I'd be completely fine with that. We've never really had a big man. Even before the Warriors were good, we're always searching for a big man. So to finally get one would definitely be intriguing. But with that said, I'd like to go to my Warriors. There is a rumor that we could be trading down to 4 and grabbing Wendell Carter Jr., who I believe is a really good fit for the modern day NBA. He's 6'9", 7'5" wingspan. He actually shot 40% from the 3-point line in college. Hasn't really translated to the NBA range. I think he's only like 90%, but he still shoots around 70% from the free throw line. So you can definitely see him stretching his game out to the 3-point line, along with being a very versatile center who can guard wings, guard the perimeter, guard guards. So I do like his fit for the Warriors. And if the Warriors can move down 2 spots, pick up him, that's not something I mind at all. The Warriors need a center, a 3-and-D wing, as well as a guard. So if they move down to 4, I think you got to be looking at potentially moving down again. One team I would like is the Celtics. The Celtics want to move up. They have 3 picks in the later round, I think 14, 17 in the 20 range. So if you can move down from 4 to 14 and also pick up someone like Marcus Smart. Now, Marcus Smart is kind of the heart and soul of the Celtics. But with that said, they're in big salary cap hell. They've got Jaylen Brown's max contract kicking in this year. They still have Gordon Hayward on the books, and then they're going to have to give a max contract to Jason Tatum. So that kind of leaves Marcus Smart out. Not sure if Danny Ainge would be willing to give up Marcus Smart, but if the Warriors can trade down, pick up Wendell Carter, pick up Marcus Smart, and then be in that 14 range to draft a 3-and-D wing, maybe Sadiq Bey, I think that would be the ideal scenario for me.
I would pay to see Draymond Green and Marcus Smart with boxing gloves. Let me tell you right now, that would be
great. Well, the Warriors would probably be the most annoying team in the NBA with those two.
No doubt, no doubt.
But I love it because that's going to lead to wins. So
yeah, winning cures all.
Yeah.
Dami straight dabbing on us with this NBA knowledge. I love it. All right, Dom. Thanks a lot.
All right, boys.
All right, moving into this upcoming week, we've got a few games to watch, but the biggest game to watch in what we call over at ePlay Chug, the game of the week, I think would be the Chiefs and the Raiders. The Raiders are on the bit of a hot streak right now, coming off a 3-game winning streak. Their last loss came against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 7, but they had a dominant showing against the Denver Broncos, covering a point spread with a mile, covering the point spread by a mile with a 37-12 win.
Yeah, in week 5 you have the Raiders beating the Chiefs 40-32. Outstanding showing by Derek Carr, 347, 3 TDs, 1 INT. Obviously, their running back Josh Jacobs, 77 yards, 2 TDs, and then excuse me, Ruggs going for 118 and a touchdown. To hold, which is kind of funny to say, to hold Mahomes to 2 TDs, 340 and an INT is actually a big win. More yards, less TDs. Usually he's throwing 4 or 5. So I think this is definitely the game of the week. The funny part of this and why I'm going to be taking Chiefs minus 6.5 on this. I think it's very easy. Once again, revenge game, right? Lost the first one. It's for the division. But even more so than that, if we talk about kind of the latest news that's come out early this week about John Gruden, doing the bus tour around the stadium, it was funny to hear that he was actually talking to the bus driver. So the bus driver that brought them in was heckling them. And per his quote, right, he was stating that not really you can find a smart aleck bus driver in Kansas City who made some snide comments when we got on the bus. Maybe that's why we drove around the stadium, was to tick him off. This is ridiculous. Next question. Bulletin board material right there. So the Chiefs have what they need now to stamp it on the bulletin board if already, right? So that's the portion of the revenge game. But if you're not already pumped up for this game as a Chiefs fan or Chiefs player, where you have to win it, right? It's for the division, got to win it. I don't know what else you need. So definitely game of the week. I expect Chiefs to win this by 14, but I'll take a minus 6.5.
Yeah, and I love John Gruden, man. He has a funny way of being able to like talk smack, yet avoid the controversy. But in this sense, I think there's a lot of eyes on this game because of that behavior, which I think is good for the game. I mean, it just drives up, it boils the blood of all the players, and I'm sure it fires up his team as well. Because you better believe if the Raiders win, they're going to be taking another victory lap, somewhere. So
Absolutely.
It'll be an exciting game for sure.
Yep, you're going to see some Spider Y2 banana, which is John Gruden's favorite play call of all time. So that will be coming out. I just don't think the Raiders are going to be able to show up in this one. Chiefs are going to dominate, and I think it's absolutely the game of the week. And it's one that I think all of us want to watch, high-powered offenses, and Mahomes should have a great showing.
Well, speaking of bets, so you're taking the Chiefs in this game. There are some betting lines that I'd like to get you on record, Vince, so we can prove to all the fans how knowledgeable and brilliant and smart and a good-looking guy you are.
Yeah, let's talk about those. So I think there's a couple that I like, right? We talked about the Chiefs. That's a big one. The Ravens-Titans game. So I like the Ravens here -7. I think everyone's down on them because they've become this, quote, simple offense, where it's basically all running. Lamar can't throw the ball. He can't position his feet. He's not a good, accurate thrower. I think the Titans are in a huge rut right now. They're basically the same team on the other end with a worse defense. Tannehill's kind of doing the same exact approach, not able to throw the ball like Lamar. You have Derrick Henry, who's kind of getting shoved at the line because everyone's stacking the box with 9 in the box. So I like the Ravens here -7. Another one that I like are the Dolphins against the Broncos. Dolphins are the hottest team in the NFL right now. They're 6-3. I like them to continue. I think Tua is the real deal when it comes to kind of that, rolling out left. I can throw, I can pass, make smart decisions, not really game managing, but rather just making accurate throws and making sure that the offense is running smoothly. So I'll take Dolphins -2.5. I got 2 others for you. All right, 2 more, Josh.
Hit me.
So let's get the Patriots +2.5 here over the Texans. I think the Texans are just in a complete rut. B.O.B. completely screwed them over, trading DeAndre Hopkins, right? Not for the first-round pick. Taking on David Johnson, who's in concussion protocol, probably still throughout this week as well. So give me the Patriots there. Never underestimate Bill Belichick. He showed that last week against the Ravens. Obviously, terrible weather, but he'll get Cam Newton playing right. They'll be running the ball right down the Texans' throat. And then the last one here, Bucks, Rams. Rams just came off a huge win against Seattle, made Wilson look very bad. I like the Bucks here -3. I think Tom Brady's on the revenge tour in these last couple games. This is him coming out and kind of proving his worth. This is a great matchup. It could arguably be our game of the week, but it is Monday Night Football, so we'll leave it for that. But I love the Bucks -3 in this matchup.
Brady's so good, man. He's America's quarterback.
He's unbelievable, and he loves avocado ice cream.
Well, you heard it here, folks. We got Vince's betting lines, and he's actually 100% on these betting lines. So if you take our advice, you can have him to blame for it when you guys lose, or if you guys lose, but you probably won't. But you definitely won't.
You shouldn't.
Don't take my word for it, though.
Yeah, take mine. And once again, just to recap those, so everyone has those. Ravens -7 over the Titans. Chiefs -6.5 over the Raiders. Dolphins -2.5 over the Broncos. Patriots +2.5 over the Texans. And then Bucks -3 over the Rams.
Okay, last part of the show. It's our beer reviews. This week, my beer selection is the Stone Viking. It's called Space Probe.
It's a good beer.
Literally got this because I was afraid of the label. And I hear that, when you're afraid of your meal or whatever you consume, it heightens the senses.
Was that a label buy?
Absolutely. And it was a good one too, because I tasted it last night.
Well,
And it was yummy.
Let's see what your thoughts are here. I believe Stone out of San Diego, fantastic brewery. If you go to the San Diego airport, they have a Stone store or restaurant. You can get every beer you want. I'm sure if anyone's been down to any type of SKO, sales kickoff, or anything of that sort, you've definitely stopped at the San Diego airport to have a Stone brewery.
Look at that. It's a little hazy. It's got little shards in it. But very refreshing, hoppy, light at the same time. Not very full-bodied, but perfect to chug, actually.
8.5% of greatness. I know that one.
Here's the thing. If Vince's betting lines are 100%, they land 100%. Or you know what? Let's do it this way. If you land more than you don't, I will chug next week.
So it's 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Yeah, 4 out of 5 is good. I like the confidence. All right, great.
Yeah, why not? And for my beer review, so as we do, right, we listen to our followers, our listeners. We want to make sure that we take care of them, and we review the beers they ask of us. And certainly that's what I'm doing this week. This is Ballast Point out of San Diego. This is the Sculpin IPA, but the grapefruit version. I don't know if you've ever had the grapefruit version. It's fantastic. We go up to a little place called Clear Lake up in Northern California, and able to get some pony kegs of a grapefruit Ballast Point. And shout out to the Bakhtiari tribe. Dave Bakhtiari, congrats again on the big contract. That's one of the best families known, and that's certainly the individuals who we drink the Ballast Point grapefruit with. So here it is. It's a beautiful one, 7%, fantastic. Very easy beer to drink. I like to think of Ballast Point as the step above Lagunitas, right? You're at a bar, you go get a Lagunitas because it's probably the go-to IPA. I think the same with Sculpin or Ballast Point, because I think when you think about these ones, right, great beer. It's a little bit better than Lagunitas, but it is kind of your everyday drinker. But it's fantastic. It's very hoppy, hops forward for sure. But it's only 7%, so you can have a couple of them. Don't have 3 or 4 of these, though, in 95-degree weather. Stick to one.
Speak for yourself. And again, shout out. Thank you again for Andrew Bakhtiari for the sorry if I butchered that last name, for the beer recommendation. And thanks to everybody still listening. Vince, cheers. Good podcast. Have a good week. And let's do it again